So now we're going to start layering our cake. We need to make a couple of decisions. This top bit is likely going to become scraps. Don't eat it yet, because sometimes you need to use it to patch in a piece or something. But likely this will become scraps. And then we need to decide between our last 3 layers, which one's going to be the top, which one's going to be the bottom, and which one's going to be the middle. So I always pick the nicest piece for the top of the cake. And so for me, that was my old bottom. Okay, so I'm going to use this for the very top. The next nicest piece is this one. I'm going to put this on the very bottom of the cake. And then the one that's the ugliest, so for me that's this top layer because it has a bit of a wrinkle in it. I'm going to hide that in the middle of the cake. So nicest layer to the top, next second nicest to the bottom, ugliest layers in the middle. So we're going to start by filling our cake. And I pulled my buttercream out yesterday and it's at room temperature. So I want to put the second nicest layer down. And then you don't want to use a big bowl of buttercream in case you get crumbs in it. You want to save a nice amount of buttercream for the outside, for the decorating. So I'm going to put a little bit into a container. So when I get crumbs in it, I'm not contaminating the whole bunch of buttercream. So put I don't know, if I had to guess, that's about half a cup of buttercream on. And then I'm going to use my offset palette knife. And I hold my offset palette knife like I'm giving it a handshake. And then I put one finger on the blade here. And that's going to give me extra support and some pressure to put on it. So hold it like a handshake. And then keeping it nice and flat, you also want to make sure your cake is right in the center of the cake wheel. Keeping it nice and flat, I'm just going to work it gently to the outside. Don't worry about the buttercream if it goes over the outside edge. You just want a nice thin layer. This buttercream is really rich, so you don't want to load it in there, and we're going to have a couple of layers. There we go. So I want it to cover just the outside edge. Then I'm going to put on my ugly layer. So I'm going to put that on, and then I'm going to check it and make sure that it's lined up nice and straight. And if it's not, I'm just going to slide it around a little bit so that it's nice and straight to the edge. You don't want it bulging out anywhere or sticking out anywhere. There we go. Now again. Some buttercream. And then working gently from the center. You'll notice I'm not picking up my palette knife. I'm keeping it down while I work my buttercream to the outside. It's also relatively parallel to the cake wheel. I don't want to be on an angle. You want to be straight up and down. And I can see I just need a touch more buttercream in this one corner. Just to make sure that I have a good healthy layer all the way around and that it's pushed off the edge. Okay, so I'm going to give it one spin towards me just to level it out a little bit. There we go. And now I'm going to crouch down and look at it from the side. Do I have any low or high spots? And I don't really, but if I did, or my cake layer was lopsided, I would reverse it to level it back out. So now, I'm going to take the last layer and pop it on top. Give it a push, make sure it's all nice in line. Spending extra time at this point will save you a lot of aggravation later. If your cake is lopsided, it's going to be a lot harder for you to decorate. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is the crumb coat. So I'm going to take some buttercream and put it on the top. Now I'm going to work it down the top to the sides. So using my offset again, this layer can be very, very thin. This is just to glue down any crumbs. This isn't a finished layer. So we're trying to, at this point, glue down crumbs and fill in any holes. So nice and thin all the way around. And then I'm going to start working on the sides. So I want to just sort of squish and smooth the buttercream around that I had squished out between the layers, and work all the way around the outside. Make sure everything is covered with buttercream. If not, put a little more buttercream on your palette knife. I'm going to do right here. And keep your palette knife straight up and down. And basically just clean off any extra that you have. Make sure all the holes and gaps are filled. Excellent. Now you can see on the top, I have some buttercream that's squished back up over the top. So to get rid of that, I'm going to hold my palette knife straight out and then just tilt it on a bit of an angle. And I'm just barely going to touch the edge. And I'm going to draw it towards me and clean my palette knife off. Turn your cake wheel. And just to the center of the cake. Don't pull all the way across. Just pull to the center. There we go. So now I have a relatively smooth cake. Just going to get rid of that one little spot. And what I want to do is I want to put it onto the back of a tray. And I'm going to chill it to make sure that that buttercream solidifies really, really nicely and glues down all those crumbs. So when I take it off of the cake wheel, I'm going to put a lot of downward pressure onto my palette knife. I'm going to slide my palette knife underneath, slide my hand underneath, balance it, then put it on the tray. And then when I'm taking my palette knife out from the tray, I'm going to put tons of downward pressure right here. And I'm just going to slide my palette knife out. I'm going to throw that in the fridge or freezer, and then we'll be back.